One gentleman spent over $57,000 when he lost his son in a tragic car accident. He almost spent $91,000. A lady called me a few years back and she said, Ken, I lost my husband a few weeks ago and I think I got taken advantage of by the funeral home. My husband had a $50,000 life insurance policy and I spent it all on his funeral. Well, then I asked her, how much did you spend on cemetery property? She said, I already had the plots. What did you spend on the casket and the funeral services? Well, she said about $16,000. It was a very nice casket and service. Well, what did you spend the other $34,000 on? Well, I had to buy him a memorial stone. I said, you spent $34,000 on a memorial stone? How big was it? And she looked down at her head and she said, well, it was about 3 carats. Gotcha. Remember the gentleman that lost his son in a tragic car accident? He spent over $57,000 on his son's funeral and he almost spent $91,000. The difference was a $34,000 memorial stone. He says, Ken, I just could not spend the money at the time. I knew $57,000 was a lot of money, but I decided to wait on the memorial stone. And a few months ago, I was on a business trip in Chicago. And I saw the exact same monument for $7,000. So I purchased it and had it shipped to Houston. And now the cemetery is telling me that they will not install it because I did not buy it from them. And I said, was it the exact monument? It says, it's identical. I got a photograph of it. Well, let me make a few phone calls and I'll call you back. And I recommended him to a monument company who would install it for about $1,200. A few weeks later, he called me back and he thanked me and he says, Ken, what do I owe you? I said, nothing. You've already lost enough. I said, you know, you spent $57,000 on your son's funeral. If you'd called me, we could have gotten the funeral for. And he stopped me in mid-sentence. He says, Ken, I am better off not knowing. Folks, this situation is not uncommon, especially when a sudden death occurs. It happens at home, at the hospital, or you get that dreaded call from a police officer in the middle of the night. Before you've had a chance for the situation to even sink in, authorities are asking you for the name of the funeral home you want to transport the body. Some Harris County hospitals only give you 4 hours before the body must be transported. Nursing homes want that bed vacated quickly. And you're having to make the decision now with very limited information. And the wrong decision within the first minutes after the death of a loved one can cost you not just thousands, but tens of thousands of dollars. You can also make mistakes that your family will regret for generations. The local funeral home often seems to be the best decision. A friend or family member may suggest a funeral home. You tell authorities to call the local funeral home, and now it is time to go home and get some well-needed rest. The next morning you get a call from the local funeral home. They want permission to embalm the body. It's already been a few hours, and you're informed that the longer that you wait on this decision, the less likely the body will look like your loved one. So you give permission. Then the funeral home wants to schedule a time for your family to come into the funeral home, and it's usually the same day. You spend several hours at the funeral home and cemetery. Now you're just going through the motions. As you listen to yourself talk, it sounds like someone else is talking. The appointment drags on and on. And every time you think it's finished, they could need another decision. When you ask about price, they volunteer that, yeah, they're happy to give you prices, but first we need a decision on this. You do have the presence of mind to know that the price is starting to get up there. But right now, all you can think of is, when is this appointment going to be over? After about 3 hours of torture, you discover the price seems very high. If you do have the presence to think about comparison shopping funeral homes, the cemetery staff is armed with several sales closes designed to discourage you from doing just that. Mrs. Jones, you may save a little money by going to our competition, but switching funeral homes can be very, very expensive. You already committed to us for certain procedures that are already in progress, and it's too late to change them. You'll be paying for them again if you switch providers, so any savings you realize will soon be gone because you switched to another funeral provider. Or, Mr. Smith, we've been at this for over 3 hours. We are not the least expensive provider. Funerals are expensive, but no one can touch our quality. And do you really want to put your wife through another 4 hours of this difficult conversation in another funeral home? Why don't we just get this over with? I can show you how to cut costs here, but if we cut any further, it will start affecting the quality of the funeral. I could name about 20 or 30 other sales closes that are designed to keep you from comparison shopping. There are many other closes at each step of the funeral and cemetery sales process that are designed to get a commitment from your family. Think of a stair-step approach. Explain a process, get a commitment. Explain something else, get another commitment. And the goal is to get the family so committed that it seems impossible to change things without affecting the quality of the funeral. Fear of dishonoring your loved one keeps you in line. Throw in the reaction of the other family members and the trap is set. Despite your gut feeling saying this just isn't right, most families are too afraid and too exhausted to switch funeral homes. Wouldn't it have been much better if you could have made one phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning and had a conversation about your many different options? Better yet, if you had called just the day before. The decisions you need to make are not easy, even when you have the time. Suppose you could have gotten the body transported without being committed to a funeral home. Suppose you had the locations and prices of all the funeral homes and cemeteries in your area before you visited the local funeral home and cemetery. Suppose the funeral homes and cemeteries had to compete for the opportunity to serve your family before they had any information on your family. With a funeral negotiator's consultant on the phone, you learn all of your options. If you're too stressed to handle it, or you just need time to think about it before making any decisions, we can buy you time and make sure you're not committed to any specific provider. If you are able to make preliminary decisions in the middle of the night, while you go home to rest, we will put all the decisions that you're considering on a spreadsheet and help you visualize it with a bar graph. Then we email it to you before you wake up the next morning. When you're refreshed, you can see the financial impact of selecting the different options and the pricing of those options at the different providers. You can also change your mind from the preliminary decisions you made the night before. With funeral negotiators, you do not have to hope that you're making the right decisions. You will absolutely know it. Making funeral decisions on the worst day of your life, is not the way to do this. But it happens. And we can help you keep control even in this situation. But it is always better to talk about it before death, even if it's just a few hours. Funeral and cemetery decisions are very stressful. These decisions can get very complicated to the point that your family is so overwhelmed they have difficulty making even the simplest decisions. You need to slow down so you can think. Funeral negotiators does just that, even at the time of death. If we can slow you down, we can save you thousands and often tens of thousands of dollars. Yes, it is almost always the best plan before death. Unfortunately, most families get their information from commissioned salespeople at the funeral home and cemetery before and at the time of death. Funeral homes and cemeteries exert a lot of pressure to purchase. This pressure is greatest when it comes to cemetery property. I call cemetery property the marijuana of the funeral industry. Cemetery property is the starter drug that gets you committed to a cemetery and a funeral home. You can easily commit your family for generations. All these situations can be avoided with the common sense approach of funeral negotiators. Give us a call at 281-357-0195 or visit us on the web at funeralnegotiator.com and cemeterycoop.com. If you're anticipating the death of a loved one and you just cannot bring yourself to discuss the details, you may be interested in purchasing the American Family Protection Plan, which gives you our best consulting rates even at the time of death. Thank you for listening, and we'll be there when you need us. Thank you.